Welcome to an exhilarating LinkedIn Live series, Leading in the Digital Era. In this rapidly evolving technological landscape, the abundance of information can be overwhelming, and the ability to adapt to constant change is crucial for effective leadership. Host 𝗥𝗵𝗴 understands the importance of staying connected to people, customers, and evolving trends. In this series, Robert takes part in engaging discussions with top executives. Together, they unveil the secrets behind their successful transformation of leadership styles, enabling them to flourish amidst the frenzied pace of the digital era. As a LinkedIn Live session, this is your chance to gain invaluable insights and strategies to empower your own leadership. Feel free to share your comments and questions in the chat. This is Leading in the Digital Era, presented by the Institute for Digital Transformation.
Hey everyone, I'm back for week 2 and I'm still nervous every time I do this, so please bear with me while I get through this and continue to be nervous. But welcome back. Today we have a really exciting show, Leading in the Age of AI and the Evolving Workplace. It's not like any other conversation we've had that I've heard about AI anywhere, so I'm very excited. But before we start, I'd like to remind you of a couple of things we have coming up. On August 21st, we'll have Building Allies at the C-Level. And on September 21st, we have Bring Your Best to Everything You Touch with Andrea Markstrom and Michael Smith. And we'll be kicking off our Tech Day of Pink support that day with all these series I've done, as you can tell from my background. Yesterday, I participated in 2 amazing events. I went with Andrea to a Women in Technology CISO event and Bill Murphy's CIO Mastermind session. In both, everyone's talking about where we should apply AI. Something Estee Lauder rolled out, and I think we'll pop up a slide here, is an AI and AR assisted program that helps visually impaired users apply makeup. AI has taken the world by storm. And we'll touch a little on technology today, but my guess that's something a little better. We're at a crossroads and we hear a lot of how do I use AI, or what do I do with it, or many what ifs, all about AI. But one of my guests says the only people at risk of losing their jobs to AI are those who refuse to work with it. And it raises a crucial question. How do we protect our workforce in this great new world? Today, we'll dive deep into the evolving role of artificial intelligence in transforming leadership and reshaping the workplace of tomorrow. We'll examine the intricacies of AI not as a tool, but not as a tool reshaping our hardware and software, but its impact on human relationships, organization culture, the nature of work itself, and pushing ourselves to our own roles. The only people that are going to lose their jobs to AI are those who refuse to work with it. I think we have another slide to show the impact of AI. John, can you pop that one up? This will be our biggest impact that we've seen so far. And if we're not using AI, then I think that those who will try to transform our businesses will be at a loss to what we've done in the past. So I'd like to start introducing my guest today. My first guest I'd like to introduce you to is Anna Ransley. Anna, bring up her bio here. Anna's an experienced C-level executive with extensive career as a chief digital officer and an information officer. I've known Anna for a while now, and I was lucky enough to be with Anna when she was when she won her Orby last year as a CIO of the Year in New York last year. Anna is a where are my notes again? Sorry. Anna, the CIO in global companies across various industries and sizes. She has significant experience in setting strategic plans for global organizations, digital transformation, cybersecurity, data, advanced analytics, e-commerce, MarTech governance, and a lot of experience in AI and ML. Thanks for joining us, Anna.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Next up is Rita King. Hi, Rita.
Hi, how are you?
Rita's an expert in work culture. She advises executives across industries. All of her experience is now streamlined into Power Pairs. Please hit that website up to align people, process, and deliver value into a modern way at pace. She's an EVP for Business Development at Science House in New York City. And she will be coming out with a book in April of 2024, which will have a number of series with Anna in both this show and our other Institute show over the next year. So please stay tuned and follow us so you can continue with Rita and her course and bring out her new book coming up. And then the last one joining us today is a longtime friend of mine, 𝗥𝗶𝗁 𝗏, sorry, Ramesh, we messed that up again and we talked about it.
All
Highly
good.
experienced IT leader, 23-year career marked by substantial contributions to prominent companies such as Prudential's, 𝗥𝗵𝗴, Barney's New York, among many others. Specializing in managing large enterprise technology portfolios. Ramesh, if you haven't been watching him on LinkedIn, is really, really powerful in the AI and ML space, and I would consider him a thought leader in the application of how this impacts people, process, and technology throughout everything Ramesh touches within his organization. And I'm proud to call Ramesh a lifelong friend for a very long time now.
Thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, everyone.
So just to get us started, this is, I would like to say, not a new technology, and while it's taking us by storm here a little bit now. Recently, I've had a lot of conversations with everyone here, and I'm blessed to have them been spending time building this show and collaborating over the past few weeks. But to kick us off, I'd like to turn with Rita, and if you could define what AI means to you, and if you could take us through your approach on how this will digitally transform our world and why we should be prepared for what AI really is.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for having me. To me, and since 2006, I've been writing about, speaking about, working with executives and lots of companies across industries to instill the notion that we should not just think of AI as artificial intelligence, but also as applied imagination. Imagination applied to our relationship with our creations, with each other, with ourselves, and rethinking what it means to work and to live with what we've created. So working with Fortune 500 companies across digital transformations, I've seen firsthand many times how they fail and how they succeed. And the truth of the matter is soft skills can't be automated. So the cost of failing a tech transformation is often a massive data storage bill. You hand your competitors advantage over you, you lose customers, and all those things are bad, but they are not nearly as bad as the failure to implement a culture that is fit for the rise of AI, artificial intelligence, and applied imagination. So if you think about what that means, and you think about soft skills not being able to be automated and the cost of failing, we really need to think differently about how we implement soft skills and how we take what we've learned from these tech transformations and apply them. So for example, tech transformations always start on the IT side, but we've learned that they are not an IT problem. And we're going down the same road again with AI now. And so I would caution leaders and senior executives and boards of directors to really pause and take time. And this is what we're working on at Science House and why I've created power pairs. Take a pause despite all the chaos and the urgency of the moment and think about what we've learned so far and not make the same mistakes, because the cost this time is much, much higher.
Thank you, Rita. And I think much higher and moves at a quicker pace. And I'd like to throw that to two IT leaders we have here, both Ann and Ramesh. And if we take to heart what Rita says and we look at applied imagination, I love AI and applied imagination. How will you, in your respective organizations, use this now to build a relationship with the business as an IT leader? What's your leadership approach in bringing that to the business now?
Well, I would say that I completely agree with everything Rita was saying, and AI is going to be, and specifically generative AI is going to be a very significant impact to every aspect of our lives in many different ways. One of the things that I've heard somebody say that really resonated with me is that AI is to knowledge workers what the assembly line was for manufacturing factory workers. We don't now sit around and say, we wish we had the old way of manufacturing done, but at the time that was happening, it was really a significant impact And I like the slide that you had, Robert, with electricity impact and what how AI is going to exponentially be bigger than that. So we do need to be very cognizant of that. There's going to be a number of workloads that will be simplified, automated, etc. But what we really need to make sure is that the decisions that we make in our lives about how we use AI are used to augment and amplify and not replace the critical thinking or the thinking that we do as humans. So in a lot of the conversations I've been having with boards, C-suites, IT leadership, the skills that we really need to make sure that we foster in ourselves and in our teams are, and if we can bring up the slide with the skills and behaviors, that would be great. I like to use the A through E model because it's easier to remember. So number one is agility and adaptability. We need to, change is coming in many different directions. And if we can adapt to it, if we can very quickly pivot to where we need to pivot, we will be positioned much better. B is boundless curiosity. So that means that we, as new things come up, we need to be constantly learning, having a growth mindset, and be able to quickly fuel what the learning that we need to do through that curiosity that we have. Critical thinking is key because we don't want generative AI or any AI models to make decisions for us. We want it to provide us information that we can make our own decisions too. We always want to have human in the loop. That's something that's very, very important. D for deliberate focus. We don't want to lose sight with all the new things that are happening. We need to be focused on the results. Otherwise, we're just going to be all over the place. And finally, emotional intelligence, because that is our differentiator. AI, it does not have EQ, but we do. And so we, again, need to add our EQ to the information that AI is providing us.
I'm sorry, John, can you bring that slide back up real quick just so I can throw this back to Ramesh? So
Yeah.
Ramesh, if you can answer the same question and as you respond to both what Rita said and take this into application from Anna, how with you and your role, you taking these skills with Rita and then ultimately looking at how we hire people based on these skill sets as well.
No, absolutely. So thank you. I think I'll start with a quote I just listened yesterday at another event. Like, if you don't take change with both hands, it's going to take you by throat. You know, Winston Churchill said that. So I think change is there. I think with all the hype cycle going on right now, at least in that last 6 to 9 months, as I think Rita, you said, AI has been around for decades. But I think the hype cycle in the last 6, 9 months, 12 months is quite a bit. I think, this ABCDE, if I got that right, I think Anna covered it very nicely. I think I read, one more thing earlier this week from nuclear science, half-life of skills is 2.5 years, meaning we need to continuously upskill, learn, unlearn new skills all the time, right? It's not, we'll be having, when I say we, I talk about broader we, the workforce, right? At all levels, whether senior level, entry level, whatever skills we have right now, we all should be open-minded. And I think the very first A from Anna, agility and adaptability, right? There will be something else 3-4 years from now, right? Whether it's AI or new form of AI and things like that. So I think all of these A, B, C, D, E, what we see on our screen right now, that's the muscle we continue to build on that, right? And when we talk about upskilling, I know there's a lot of things about, in a lot of organizations, notion of upskilling, reskilling employees. Another key element is that, there's a 70-20-10 rule. Again, something, we have all heard, there's only 10% of the learning which happens through formal learning, whether it's courses, whatnot. 20% is, with peer group, but 70% of the learning actually happens on the job, or getting your hands, dirty. So I think as we try to prepare our workforce, of course, we can, give them all sorts of trainings or whatnot, but I think we need to find opportunities, projects. And I think as Anna said, right, be focused, don't try to run all over. There are a lot of things which are thrown at us from all all over the media, social media, from our partners, etc. But I think be very focused on what we want to do, the business outcomes. I think at the end of the day, right, in the corporate world at least, focus on those business outcomes, and can we really measure that, and how do we kind of go about doing that?
Thanks, Ramesh. And I want to. We've had a couple of questions pop up, and I just want to bring this back and read it, if you don't mind me starting with you. Just taking all this together, and we look at the way we used to hire used to be, and many industries go this way. While you're doing this, I wrote a quick ChatGPT code. Write me a insurance program in React, and it does, right? So I think the era of having the need to have industry specific experience is falling behind to the fact that you need passion and drive and the ability to ask better questions and do active listening. And from the question that we've seen here, how does this help the future of work, and are running the risk of pushing ourselves out of roles, or where is human intelligence go?
I think that companies, and this is part of my mission, companies should start to think about growing a percentage of the workforce to be creative generalists that can be utility players in a process rather than have a job description that is what they stick to over time. This one change would make a tremendous difference. And I've spent years trying to bring this into fruition, but I think the time is right now for more creative generalists who aren't necessarily industry specific. We're always going to have subject matter experts, but I think the larger issue is we've been living under the move fast and break things, guideline for so long, but that's something that toddlers do. And I think it's time for us to mature and realize that we need to slow down. And that scares people. People are terrified to slow down because they're going to miss something. And there's a sense of urgency constantly, but the sense of urgency it's real on the one hand, but it's an illusion on the other hand. And it's costing more in the long run than it's gaining us in the short term. So I would use as an example, Ramesh and Anna, we all just talked about the life cycle of AI. It has been around for a long time, but undeniably there's been an inflection point where it's broken into the mainstream consciousness, right? The same was true for remote work. Companies that planned ahead and had rational hybrid work policies did better during the pandemic than companies that went into triage mode and had to just function under that. And experts cropped up everywhere. Everyone's suddenly an expert in remote work, but we've been in triage mode, and we have to face that fact too. We adapt to anything very quickly, and we forget that certain things are not right or normal because we're doing them. We're habituated to them. So I think AI now has a feeling just like that. Suddenly it broke into the mainstream. Everybody wants to be an expert. Nobody wants to admit that they don't know what to do. And the truth is, a lot of people miss the boat on the decades of preparation that have preceded it breaking into the mainstream. And so what I'm trying to do is ring the alarm bell so that we don't react again when the inevitable consequences of bringing AI into the company, whatever industry we're in, whatever company we're in, whatever size company, it's changing everyone. It's changing companies, changing the way we work, changing society. And my fear is we're going to do what we always do, which is wait until we get slapped across the face with reality and then react as if we're all experts, instead of slowing down and bringing rational policies into the process of AI as applied imagination. And that includes hiring. That includes hiring creative generalists. That includes getting real about humanity and soft skills. And you'll notice what Anna showed, those are soft skills too. And somebody put a comment on screen saying, that's what leadership should be regardless of AI. And I completely agree. And I'm hoping this is the rise of leadership the same way it's the rise of AI right now, because we need real leaders with courage and heart who are not afraid.
And if I can just chime in, Robert, quickly, I think two things. What I think, Rita, and I think going back to even the ABCDE, I'm going to talk, I like the acronym. I think there's also, again, we will not go too deep into it because this is not a technical call, like the bias, right? The element of bias and element of explainability, to say that slowly, explainability of the AI and various forms of AI, right? A lot of the things we see out there in market, the companies have tough time explaining in plain English to an average, user or an average business, person how this AI works. And if we can't explain in a lot of industries, in a lot of use cases, we won't be able to use it. It's as simple as that. There's no ifs and buts. And I see a lot of organizations, when I say organization, when I speak to or companies out there, they, and again, they have different excuses or whatnot that said their secret sauce, etc. I get it, some part of it, but at the end of the day, you still the workforce who's using that technology under the hood, they need to feel confident knowing how the system is doing what we think it's doing, and kind of how can we prove that it is indeed doing. So there's a lot of elements which go into that, and I think again back to slowing down. Why I say all of that is back to actually the slowing down part of what Rita said. A lot of activity happening, chaos, I think is the word, Robert, I think a couple of you use. But I think it's not slowing down, but just being very cautious. I think everybody has the FOMO, fear of missing out, but I think let's not rush too much into it. It's here to stay. It's been there for a while. It's just making the right decisions, thinking through all aspects of it.
I like that, and I like what Rita said about the rise of leadership, and that's really what we should be spending a lot of our time on, is how do we make sure that the way that we implement AI solutions are augmenting and amplifying, and how do we apply the critical thinking, and how do we foster critical thinking in our employees? What are the things that we need to do? We have generations of experts right now in the workforce. Eventually, as we automate more and more menial tasks, those skills are going to be harder to get because you didn't start from the ground up. So as we remove the runs in some of the grunt work that we're doing, we as leaders need to be really thinking about what does that mean in terms of educating, onboarding, and training new generations of employees. And that means the educational system needs to take a look at how we educate the kids, and how do we continue with that critical thinking, with a growth mindset, with continuous learning. And at the same time, we're preparing everybody for jobs that may not exist today. Yes, we know that we're going to have prompt engineers, we're going to have AI engineers, but there's all sorts of jobs that don't exist today that will exist in the future. And as we bring in new employees in, we need to prepare them for that, and we need to make sure that they have the foundational knowledge to do what they need to do. This one analogy I like to use is, we all have calculators to do the math for us, but that doesn't mean that we don't learn arithmetic in school, because if the calculator says that 2 + 2 is equal to 50, we know in our gut that that's not true. And we need to make sure, and that's a very simple example, but we need to make sure that we can apply that to anything that AI provides to us as an answer, to then have that critical thinking. So a very key thing for all of the leaders to think about is, how do we continue fostering critical thinking in our employees, and what are the skills that we need to enable our people to have and develop to continue staying relevant?
I'm loving the comments, by the way. Sorry, Robert. I saw, I think Tamara made a comment earlier on, which was flashed on the screen. Absolutely. I think all these skills, Anna spoke about, they were relevant 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think with the AI black box coming into the picture in most of the organization, I think it just amplifies, I think what Anna just said, the critical thinking, question everything, don't assume, don't take things at its face value. And I think we need to build that type of atmosphere, or empower our team members to kind of always have that element of what I want to use, critical thinking. I'll just use that word, kind of question things. Go ahead, Robert.
So it's a powerful statement, right? It's not IT leaders, it's leaders everywhere, and AI is leveling the playing field. If we look at the growth model and where things went, when we moved from the farms to the industry during the Industrial Revolution, we had generations to make that transition. And that was a tough change for society back then. And when we look at Industry X.0 and the way things transform, we had a generation to make that type of change. Here, we don't have that type of time to embrace this mindset and train people to look at the way we interact now, right? Asking people to be a creative generalist going forward, and asking people to have a different mindset now is not something we have generations to impact. The cultural change that we have to look at and tell people, stop looking for that magic bullet and start treating our children and our children's children had behaved differently and asked different questions and have a different approach and mindset to where we're going has to begin today, or in less than a generation, we won't be hiring those types of people. How do you guys look at approaching that type of education to the people around us?
I think you need to first have an unvarnished look, visibility into the reality of team dynamics to remove interpersonal friction. Part of the reason these things take so long is because of the nebulous nature of interpersonal dynamics and the fact that much of the way that companies have dealt with this. I mean, there was an article in the New York Times recently. It's a $2 billion business of personality tests at work. And most of the way I've seen some of the culture consultants that come in selling snake oil and you know, it's not a rational way to deal with this problem. So it's a combination of art and science. I believe in the fact that soft skills are the most difficult. Soft does not mean squishy and nebulous. It means flexible. You know, like Lao Tzu says, you know, water overcomes a rock because a rock is rigid, right? And water is persistent and soft and fluid. So the first thing that needs to happen is this battle between the idea of hard skills and soft skills needs to end. And so I'll give you just a practical example, just working in business and IT for so long. If you have a group of engineers that are trying to explain an IT system to a bunch of business people who may not understand what they're talking about, again, everybody's different. I'm painting with a broad brush stroke here, but you know, IT side is often very eager to give every detail of every single system to an audience of glazed-eyed people who just want to know how it serves their customer, right? So there's a huge communication gap there. And you would think that because that communication gap is so persistent, so expensive, single-handedly often causes tech transformations to fail, that it would be addressed by now. But in fact, it keeps persisting. Why, right? So that's why I suggest pausing, taking a breath, and asking ourselves, what are some of the predictable dynamics that lead to failure regardless of the starting point? And let's address those in a pragmatic and streamlined way. So if we did it in a streamlined way, it wouldn't take as long, right? The only reason it takes so long is because we rationalize human behavior in ways that are, so it's more about being confused about what it means to be human than being confused about what it means to implement AI, I think, in many cases.
It's actually a big statement, right? And many conversations I said earlier, we're hearing are all about AI and technology, but I love that it's more about being confused to be human and how the human element is really impacting what AI does. It's not a technology here. It's changing the way we think and operate in the imagination component of it. And I mean, we just got a perfect time in here. Sorry, Anna, go ahead.
Yeah. One thing to also think about is absolutely these skills that we were talking about is critical. Part of that curiosity, I think it's every leader's responsibility to understand how generative AI actually works, what it does and what it's good at and what it's not good at. Because to many people at first, it seems like this very magical solution to all sorts of problems. And I'm hearing more and more people bringing use cases in that really have nothing to do with Gen AI or Gen AI strength. It's a language model. It's not, it's good with some things, but it's not good with others. And leaders are the ones that really need to understand that it's just predicting the next word versus anything else that we may assign to it. So it's just really important that we channel the right use cases, the right uses, and the right attitudes from our stakeholders, whether it's our employees, whether it's our peers and other people in the organization.
I call it fear of unknown. I think, so back to you, you know what, Anna, you said, I think, and Anita, I think also dumbing it down. I think I'm watching the comments. So thank you, John, for doing a great job. I think it's you know, liking this format, but, you know, I think somebody said, how can we explain that to a 5-year-old? I probably won't go that far, but it's, you know, help translate all this powerful tools and technologies we have, and make sure our leaders, our stakeholders, our workforce understands that a lot of these tools have been around. I think we'll see more and more come in coming, actually not even years. I think 6 months or 3 months. Every single company, tech company on the planet is working on it. But really take time. Again, back to the pause. Again, I like read about, but just understand and how does it changes. I think somebody said the word, and I'm going to quote, AI plus human equals superhuman. That these tools can really benefit if done rightly, and because what we don't want to also happen is, I think, and you said earlier on, we have a generation of people who have a lot of experience, the domain knowledge, the business experience, and all that. So people to get anxious about that. So I think we are going to be in that phase for a while, whatever time it takes. But I think if done rightly, the things Rita spoke about, I think we can come out of the other end with a lot of successful outcomes for a lot of organizations.
I think it's really important too, that idea of leaders truly understanding what the technology can do. And that's also been true in tech transformations overall, right? The misperception that, for example, getting off a mainframe and creating a microservices architecture is not it's not a one-to-one translation. You have to deeply understand your business and where you're going. And if you take that same mindset here and you think about a future where every person has access to the same cheap tools. Let's just pretend we're there now. Let's pretend everyone has access to the same cheap tools. Where does your competitive advantage come from in that environment? It comes from the human beings using the tools in more creative and imaginative ways, understanding your customers more effectively, understanding how an organization functions, right? So if everyone has access to the same cheap tools, why not start now with the competitive advantage, that the only competitive advantage you're going to have in the future, which is your creativity and your imagination. That's it.
I'll just add, glad you said that. At the event I was there yesterday, all these, again, not going into a lot of technical, but all the tools, whether it's OpenAI's or Google's or the Facebook's, everything will be very soon a commodity, like we have seen with cloud computing and everything else, all these transformations, right? It is going to be all the models plus minus 5%. They can all do, pretty much, more or less the same. I think what you said, Rita, and probably one more thing I'll just touch upon, which I think kind of ties to that, but just a little element, the data, right? Again, but in all these tools, like I think we use this term called junk in, junk out, or garbage in, garbage out, et cetera, right? Again, going back to ABCDE, of Anna's, skills, like the critical thinking, do we have the right data? Are we using it in the right way? Because if not, the technology is not going to be the differentiator here. It's how we make use of it, making sure we have the right data sets, etc. Kind of leveraging, and ensuring that becomes the competitive edge for the organizations.
So Mike popped up an interesting comment up here, and I don't know where it goes in the future. And I got shut down very quickly in our prep calls when I mentioned AGI, and Rita just stifled me. And I guess that's a good stifle, because who knows where we are and where this actually goes. Many years ago, I attended Singularity University, and we talked about the rapid growth of technology and how that grows exponentially. So we don't know where we're going to be tomorrow. No one could have predicted this 2 years ago, except for maybe those that are at OpenAI. But where do we go, and what this replaces? And Anna mentioned earlier, we don't know what the jobs are going to be created in the future for this. But the thing that will stay constant is the human element to all of this, right? So I do think that if we have to keep talking about pushing imagination and pushing the ability to get people to be more creative is the only static thing I can think of that becomes the important component of what you look for in a colleague, what you look for in a conversation, and of course, diversity of thought. Without that diversity of thought, you can't grow that thought process exponentially. And if you get all the same people in the room saying the same thing, the lack of growth is going to be there. And I think if we don't embrace that diversity and that imagination, then there'll be nothing else, I think, to build that level, to start from that level playing field to go forward.
I actually wrote Mike's comment down when it came up on the screen too, and I loved it, about AI won't replace coders until business users can state their requirements clearly. This is what we're talking about, right? This is an excellent opportunity for us to focus on one thing: clarity. Clarity. What business are you in? Why? I recently went to a lighthouse just to see it. And in the lighthouse, there was a little sign that said, lighthouses, they're so altruistic. They only exist for one reason, to help people get to the port, right? But everything in the lighthouse revolves around keeping that light on so that you can help people get to the port. So many companies are all over the place. They're bombarded by a million things and they don't know where to put their focus, and it shows. And that's why people are in meetings all day, and that's why people are confused all day about what their jobs are. So I think this is a really excellent opportunity to focus on the thing that was already lacking, which is clarity in what you're trying to do and the best way to be truly agile in getting there. Not just agile methodology, but thinking in an agile way about delivering value in an ongoing basis. We've kind of lost sight of that. Knowledge work is nebulous. It's not like factory work where you can't build a car at home at night because you don't have the factory, right? Knowledge work is this nebulous, squishy thing. As long as I have my computer and my laptop and somebody needs something from me, I'm getting pinged. We need to really get serious about what work is now and how humans fit into it. And it's an opportunity for clarity. Lighthouse.
I love that. And it's also, we are always adding a human component. The only thing that AI can do is take what was done before and regurgitate that in a slightly different way, potentially. So coming back to that meme that Mike put out there, I just love that. Thanks, Mike, for doing that. If you really think about what we add as humans, maybe you can replace some coding, but you can't replace the code review process that actually looks through things and makes sure that it's not creating anything malicious or unintended consequences, because that's a really big thing that AI is not really going to help us with. Same with the business requirements. The end users, even when they're really clear about what it is that they want, doesn't mean that that's always the case. And I think we know that. They may be very clear, I just want something that does A, B, and C, but in reality, they want C, D, and F. So it's that critical thinking component that we keep coming back to, and the educating ourselves on what the technology can or cannot do and what the limitations are. It really comes down to those two things.
Jordan and Mike have a conversation going back and forth, and I agree with Michael Pompey that good code is art, but starting off and getting us to a good point is about asking better questions and getting there, and that without that imagination, it's going to be a false start either way. Ramesh, are you using any of these aids to help you in your place there? Or?
We are getting some feedback. I do use them on my personal life quite a bit, trying to dabble some of that. I do want to. I think Rita or Anna said in their last comment, I think that some of the jobs in future, etc. I think we all heard the word prompt engineering and whatnot, right? And there's one new thing I heard yesterday: content science. So not data science, like the evolution. And again, I have to get my head around this. Full transparency. I just heard it yesterday. So I'm sure I'll read it when I get a chance. But again, it's the evolution, right? Data science took us here, and I'm sure there's a lot of data science to be there. I'm not saying data science is going away, but the new, again, back to, I think we've all heard of prompt engineering and how we need that type of skill set. Again, back to the curiosity, I think Anna talked about, but I think there's other elements which will come up, and I think companies are doing it, including where I am. But I think a lot of companies I see, we all go, log on to your platform of choice, whether it's LinkedIn and other platforms. You'll see a lot organizations are going in that direction, and I think that's great, because I think companies have realized in the last couple of years they can't get out of this, whatever we call this phase, like by hiring people out. Right, you got to bring your workforce with you, right? You can't get out of, if people think we're just going to hire new people, because everybody's doing that, right? Or some of these skill sets don't exist, right? I don't think 6 months ago, if you were to look at prompt engineering, that word was there, probably in OpenAI or other companies, but as a average person, we didn't knew that term exists, or at least I didn't knew. I'll admit, but now we're talking about those things. So I think that is what is going to continue to happen. Learn, unlearn also, right? It's also, right, one more thing I saw very recently. We all talk about machine learning, and just there's something called machine unlearning, right? So how do we unlearn? And I think that the same thing goes for humans as well, right? As humans, we've all, I can speak for myself. I grew up with certain, technologies or ways of working, and over the years, I have learned new things, which by nature means I have unlearned some of the things so that I can focus on, using the agility. I think both Rita and Anna spoke about, and I think same thing we need to continue to foster at our workplace, in our teams, and I think that will be the recipe for success. I think we have a question.
Well,
Thanks, Rick.
just to add to that, I think it's really
Yes, Anna, I'm
interesting.
sorry, go on.
Even I heard Microsoft speak yesterday, and they were talking about how they very deliberately named their products Copilot, because they always feel that the human needs to be in the loop, and it's there to help and not replace any of the work that we're doing. It's just interesting food for thought there.
Yep. No, I agree. I think that's a great company to watch. I'll just leave it at that. I'm looking at this question. Isn't a great deal of chaos surrounding AI nomenclature? Can our panelists? I'm not sure about the intent of that question. Are they saying different types of AI? I don't know, Robert or John, if love to answer that, but just want to make sure I'm understanding that question correctly.
I'm assuming it's about terminology.
But there's a general answer to that question too, which is just in general, we tend to use mixed language to mean the same thing. Again, I push us to go back to simplicity. There is no shame in simplicity. In simplicity, as you were saying earlier, Ramesh, can you explain it to a 5-year-old? I mean, Richard Feynman used to say that even about the most sophisticated physics, right? If you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you may not understand it, right? And there is no shame in taking the time to make sure we understand each other. This goes back to business requirements. This goes back to our relationship with our creations. There's a lot of assumptions in our communication. We assume, well, I said it at my town hall. They all heard me say it. So now off you go, people. Go do this hugely complicated thing. I named the project and said it at my town hall, right? So we often completely underestimate the miscommunications that happen in our language, and using mixed language to mean the same thing is a real problem there. And so one of the soft skills I think that we need to cultivate is, again, take a breath. Did the person that you, or group of people that you intend to receive your message, actually understand it? Have you confirmed that we're all on the same page here? And frequently that's not the case. So I don't know exactly what the question meant, but I think this problem, again, transcends AI, and it's a human problem.
Yeah, I mean, from a nomenclature, I think if that's what they were saying, yeah, I mean, AI has very flavors of it. I mean, I don't think that's the intent of this conversation, but yeah, there is a lot of elements to it. But back to simplicity, there's something I learned very, very early on from my career. KISS principle, KISS, keep it simple, sweet, right? I think we've all heard that. So I always keep that handy. And then B, also, back to the nomenclature, real example, again, we'll not go into the details, but I ran into this organization. They were saying AI, and within half an hour, we could distill again critical thinking and all the things. Again, back to the ABCD. I'll keep going back to what we were able to figure out. There's no AI. There's basic statistical modeling and all those things which have been there even before computers, I guess. Again, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a math major, but I'm sure those were there even before we had computers or before artificial intelligence was there. And I think a lot of companies are really trying to and monetize is not the right word. It's really getting, and maybe it's not even cheating. But I think we, again, back to critical thinking. You have to be mindful of what you're buying, because it can be a double-edged sword. I truly believe AI and all this hype cycle and the sales cycle. So especially a warning sign for all of our vendor partners who are listening. If you cannot explain, again, we use the 5-year-old example from one of our viewers. If you can't explain me in plain English, and then you're going to have a tough time, selling your product to, businesses, small, medium, or large.
And whose job is it to make sure you're solving the right problem?
People.
Well, that's asking clarifying questions and regurgitating back that this is what you said, Reed, and something, action learning taught us that, business architecture. So Ricardo popped up a clarifying question on that last comment. Is AI everything you need, I think, however, but I think in our last conversation, I think our prep call for this yesterday, we did sort of touch on this, and AI is just another tool to get us to where we need to go as humans. And as we're doing this, and it doesn't change where we started with, and the Institute for Digital Transformation, where we started digital transformation, it's still the same people that are putting this forward using the same skills. And this is what we sort of touched on yesterday. It's the same thing. It's just another tool that's getting us to our next step where we need to go. And if we embrace that tool, but still keep these same skill sets that we have, which is all that human element, but just use our imagination to use them differently, that's how we're going to grow exponentially and keep our edge moving forward. But start keeping those attributes that we used to hold dear to us in the past, and maybe they're not so important anymore, but passion and drive and a creative imagination will be a good way to move forward. So why don't we take this as a last question, and then I'll follow up with a final thought to each one of you guys. Came from A on Richard. So we're not talking a lot about the application of AI here, but this question is any examples where we use an efficiency gain from any AI implementation. So have any of you guys had any experience where you used AI to gain any efficiencies in your organizations?
Well, I've been talking to a lot of companies about how they're looking to leverage AI and already are leveraging AI. And the one that was the most stark example to me was a travel company that is automating a tremendous amount of processes that they have internally and in interacting with their customers to create itineraries that are very customized to the specific things that the end user is looking for. So that was something that was very powerful, where they're doing this at scale, and the type of itineraries that people are generating are phenomenal. Are they 100% there? No, but a travel agent is not going to be able to do that for you anyway. And so they were able to save a lot of money by using AI to do those customizations, and they were also able to add a lot to the customer satisfaction scores that they're measuring. And that was probably the biggest example that I've seen, but there are quite a few areas, from generating marketing materials to automating some of the processes that people have that just help augment the work that people are doing, that I've seen.
And Robert, I'll just quickly add one more thing without going into a lot of details. A lot of companies, especially large companies, have this problem called searchability or findability, right? They have tons and tons of information. And especially now in the new hybrid world, when not everybody comes off at the same time, we miss that peer connection a little bit, or the water cooler. Employees in all organizations spend tons of time searching for that information for which they need to do their job. Whether it's, there are tons of use cases about that. So AI is a classic use case wherein it can suck in all the information, and we can have simple, virtual assistant bot, whatever we want to call it, so to help employees do their job quicker, faster in all aspects of the business, right? Whether it's HR facing, finance facing, and all aspects of an employee life cycle or their day, what they need to do. So there are a lot of use cases every organization is exploring, where I think it can make this whole notion of EODB, or ease of doing business, right? And that business doesn't mean external business, by the way. It also means external and internal, meaning can employees get to what they need faster, so that they can work on all the value add stuff we're talking about. So there are tons of use cases out there. Again, I'm happy to talk offline about that.
Same at Science House too. I mean, we have countless thousands and thousands and thousands of, first person interviews across client companies that are anonymized. That's how we know what works and doesn't work for tech transformations. And we can now find patterns in those interviews. So when we do our workshops with executives, helping them understand the relationship between the failure points and the success points, we can use AI to find those connections in our database. And it's really changed the way we're able to help our clients too.
So thank you guys. I'm going to add one to this, and it's just going to be a quick little story I'll drop with you. I just recently had a HPE conference in Vegas, and they were rolling out their new AI platform. And I think a lot of the hype around AI has taken us out of our heads and into, or I guess out of our hearts, where my imagination runs from, and into our heads a little bit too much. And I saw a tremendous opportunity for us to look at where AI can help. But I'm going to just throw out for everybody, for their imagination, think on going forward, the convergence of AI with AR and the application of maybe a little bit of exposure where you might want to look at how it can impact your business at a level where if we take all of our leading or bleeding or cutting edge technologies and combine them together, what can we do with these tools together? I have a conversation a little bit on it today about one of those applications that maybe we can actually help. And I'm not going to use AI, LLM and AI and VR and AR and VR and blockchain and something like that. All this could come together to exponentially make us grow, but it doesn't start without a little bit of passion, a little bit of imagination, and a bunch of people getting together to try to move us into a different direction than we have gone in the past. And that doesn't happen without people, and this didn't happen without you guys. So if you guys have any final thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
At the end of the day, it's all about people. It's all about people. We are in people and information business. Every company is an information company. It's all about people.
I like that.
Anna?
And I would say continue learning, be curious, don't be afraid, but be aware of the potential risks and actively mitigate them in a very, very proactive way.
The evolution of technology is an inevitable arc, and humanity is intertwined with that creative process. But I am very curious myself to see how far we can take our natural intelligence in tandem with this process. And we have a golden opportunity here to see if we're as smart as we think we are.
Or at least we can imagine we can get there. But so I agree that it's people, and I want to thank you people for joining me here. I appreciate the journey we took to get here. I know you're all coming back because I already guilted me into doing it. We'll support Rita in her plight and her getting her book out in April. And
Thank you.
please check out
Looking forward to it.
It's a great site with some great case studies on there. Please check these guys out. You can find their LinkedIn links on the site here. You can get them. This will be posted tomorrow. So once it's posted, please send it to all your friends and make sure that they watch it too, because this is a great show. And I'm happy we really focused on the human element of what AI can do and the leadership component. And I thank you guys for this journey over the past month or so. And I look forward to our future conversations.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks everyone for watching engagement as well.
Thanks for joining Leading in the Digital Era, hosted by Robert Veal. Look for more Leading in the Digital Era, presented by the Institute for Digital Transformation, coming to a LinkedIn Live session soon. Can't join Robert for the live session? You can catch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.